How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So for this video, I wanted to discuss with you my very first automatic chronograph in my collection, and that is this guy here. This is the Sinn 103, which is kind of like the lesser, not as well-known big brother to the very popular Sinn 104 pilot watch, which is another timepiece that I actually own. And in fact, you'll probably see a couple of comparisons between the Sinn 104 and my Sinn 103 throughout the review portion of this video. Now, in the past, I've always liked the idea of having a chronograph, although it's not a complication that I use very extensively. And also, for past chronographs I've owned, they've all been quartz chronographs, just because the cost was much more affordable and the overall case thickness wasn't as thick because you didn't have all these mechanical components operating the actual chronograph movement. Moreover, I found a lot of the designs for certain chronographs to be not very well laid out and obscure all of the subdials that you need in order to read the time precisely. But when it comes to Sinn, and I've owned a few, I just love the over-engineering that this German manufacturer does. I find the legibility and design of this watch very good, and it has all the complications you want in a layout that still makes it fairly versatile overall. So does the Sinn 103 have a place in your collection? Well, let's flip perspectives now, and I'll show you this watch up close in my studio. Alright guys, so welcome to my Sinn studio. As you can see, up on the pedestal here is the Sinn 103. And just for comparison throughout this review, I'm going to be taking a look at the Sinn 104 as well. I'm just going to hold both watches up close just so you can see some of the similarities in the Sinn design language. First off, both have the same case diameter of 41 millimeters across the case. Now if I flip these watches to the side, I think you could also see the similar lines, those nice bevels, and the fully polished case on both watches. But where you will see a distinct difference is in case thickness, because of course you do have automatic chronograph movement in the 103 here. So yeah, if you just look at the side profile to the Sinn 103, it's almost made up of three distinct different layers. You have the noticeable case back, which has a sapphire see-through display. You have the mid case here with the pushers, and then you have a top portion which has the bezel in that slightly domed sapphire crystal. So if you actually measure it from the very bottom to the very top like this, it's 17 millimeters, which seems intimidating, but it actually wears a lot thinner than that. Okay, so let's move in on this beautiful matte black dial. And you can see in typical chronograph fashion, you have three subdials. Starting at the 12 o'clock, that is your running minutes for the chronograph. And as you can see, as the main chronograph second hand sweeps past the 12, you get a very distinct incremental increase in the number of minutes counted up to 30 minutes by that subdial. Moving to the 6 o'clock subdial, it's your elapsed hours for the chronograph movement. And I love how they have the German word for automatic just smiling over that subdial register. And then finally, for your 9 o'clock subdial, that is your running seconds hand. So that's what the actual time is, and that would keep going even if the chronograph feature wasn't engaged. You can see it's just marked from 0 to 60 seconds. And you can actually see that hand is distinctly different from the other subdials. It just has a simple baton style hand, whereas the subdials for the chronograph at the 12 and 6 actually have arrow tips that matches kind of like the spade arrow tip for the chronograph second hand. And then if that wasn't enough, you also have a day and date display near the 3 o'clock position where you can see Sinn clearly signed above the date window. So overall, Sinn gives you a ton of actual useful features on the dial, but still balances out with some symmetry because you do have those subdials broken up by nice thick Arabic style numerals for your main hours, and I find that the date easily offsets the register for your running seconds at the 9 o'clock display there. Now I find a lot of chronographs in this tier typically have like a tachymeter or something printed on the bezel, but you don't have that here. What you actually have is you have a 1 hour countdown timer, which is also similar to the bezel insert that's on the Sinn 104 here. So with this 60 click bidirectional countdown timer, what you can actually do is, say I wanted to time 5 minutes without using the chronograph feature, I can just move the 5 minute marker to the actual minute hand, and then when it reaches the luminous triangle here, I know 5 minutes has elapsed. And if you listen to the clicks, the detents of this bezel, it's extremely solid and reassuring. Another feature of this bezel, which is used on most Sinns, is they have a captive bezel design. So you can see there's actually small screws that are incrementally put along the bezel. So you can't just pop off this bezel with friction. You actually have to dismantle, remove the screws before you can gain purchase to removing the bezel. Okay, another practical feature I love about the 103, and it's also found on the 104, is the water resistance. This is actually 200-meter water resistant, and you can see that the main crown is screwed down, and you also have screwed down pushers as well. So most automatic chronographs typically have a relatively low water resistance rating, because obviously these pushers here are your failure points for letting water in. But because you have those screwed in, once they're tightened down, then you do get that full 200-meter water resistance rating. Now I'm actually going to unscrew these pushers here just so you can see how the chronograph is operated, and it's fairly standard. So you can see the chronograph seconds hand is already moving away there. So if I engage it, it's going to stop the time. And then if I push the 4 o'clock pusher here, everything just snaps right back into place. And then if I want to restart the chronograph, I just push the pusher near the 2 o'clock and you're good to go. Okay, so what's powering this chronograph movement? Well, it's a Valjoux 7750, which has 25 joules, breathes away at 4 hertz, and you have about a 42-hour power reserve. And just in case you're wondering how well Sinn does their movements, they do slightly modify the Valjoux. They do finish it and decorate it quite well. You can see you have some nice striping, some thermally blued screws there in the center, and then you have that Sinn rotor. Now this rotor actually isn't gold. Most Sinn watches I've previously owned, like the 104 and the 556, have a gold tone rotor. But nevertheless, I'm really happy that they included a display case back for this. Now you can get the 103 with an acrylic crystal and solid case back, and it's less expensive. But I did opt for obtaining a Sinn 103 that has that sapphire sandwich here. So you got sapphire dome crystal on the top, and then you have that sapphire case back, which is gorgeous. I really like this leather strap for the chronograph model, but I'm actually throwing a little curveball here because it actually came on a bracelet. And for those of you wondering, you can actually take the Sinn 103 bracelet and put it on my Sinn 104. And look at the integration that I've done here. So again, here's the Sinn 104, but it's rocking the Sinn 103 H-Link bracelet. So this leather strap is actually on the Sinn 104. So I basically swapped the two. And just because this watch is taller and a little heavier, I just think it's a little more comfortable. And I just love the look of it on leather. And this leather strap is very high quality. But again, at a glance, I just love the legibility and functionality of both these watches. I think both of them do a very good job with legibility because you do have anti-reflective treatment on the underside and top side for both watches on the sapphire there. And the lume for both watches is actually quite good. I'll throw up a low light shot head to head so you can see the lume on both, but it doesn't disappoint on either model. You'll note that the hands light up very well on both models, and then the hour indexes also light up very well. The difference being that you have the Arabic numerals on the Sinn 103, and you have the more baton style lume filled indices on the 104, but both also have a very nice luminous triangle on their bidirectional bezels. Okay, and here's a wrist shot of the Sinn 103 on my 19 centimeter or about 7.5 inch wrist. And as you can see, I don't think it wears as tall as the dimensions would state. It does hug your wrist quite well with those lugs that angle down. And it does offer nice wrist presence and legibility when you're wearing it. And it's very comfortable on a leather strap. Okay guys, so that about wraps up the review portion of this video. Are there any negative aspects that I should mention? I think there's only two minor gripes that I have overall about this timepiece. One is the all polished case, which is a gripe I also have with the Sinn 104. I think these are both more of a sports and tool watch, so it would be nice to have kind of like a brushed or more satin finish on the sides of the case, so it doesn't pick up scratches as noticeably. And then the only other negative I would say is really the price. This trends $1,000 more above the Sinn 104, and that's kind of pricey for a chronograph that doesn't have its own in-house movement. But that said, I do love the overall execution of the subdials for this chronograph, and you're also getting all of those over-engineered Sinn features that I come to love. High water resistance, high shock resistance, and being anti-magnetic. And they also tend to regulate and keep these movements running very well. Anecdotally, this is only picking up about 5 seconds per day. So guys, that about wraps it up for this video. Let me know in the comments which one of these you'd prefer and why. And as always, I'll catch you guys in the next video.